Welcome to the Omaha Magazine podcast, It's About All of Us, where we highlight Omaha business and community leaders, arts and culture, and where to dine and play. I'm Gil Cohen, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Omaha Magazine. The education system has faced unprecedented challenges in the past few years. In this episode, we have Matthew Ray, the new superintendent of Omaha Public Schools. With nearly 30 years of experience in Omaha education and a passion for change and progress, he's here to share his vision for the district's future and how they are tackling current obstacles post-COVID and advancements in AI technology. Well, welcome back to our podcast. We have a terrific guest on this afternoon or morning, whenever you're going to watch it. Matt Ray, who is the now official superintendent of the largest school district in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And this when this airs, you'll have been in the position for several months, but now that we're taping, you've been in the position officially for a month.
Yeah, since July 1st.
Since July 1st.
Yes.
So
when this airs, I'll have fixed everything, right?
Hopefully there wasn't a lot of fix because you were the interim.
That's true. That's true.
You probably hopefully you set yourself up pretty well for to take over that position. And if you don't mind going into the search process a little bit, talk about the search process a little bit.
So when the previous superintendent announced her resignation or her retirement, the school board hired a search firm, and then the search firm went about trying to determine what the Board of Education wanted in a candidate. Okay. They did some community forums to get input from the community and staff. Then they posted the job description and application, and with all those qualifications, and they went through an interview process. I believe they screened. I don't know how many people they had screened initially, but they had screened a number of applicants, and they came down to 4, and I was one of the 4. The board made a decision that the interim could apply, which is not always unusual? The case. Yeah, it's not always the case. Previously, when the school districts had an interim, that person couldn't apply. This was an unusual sort of situation or a different situation. And so I was allowed to apply even as the interim, and they narrowed it down to 4. There were some public meetings, and then there was a very public interview process of all 4 candidates.
How was that?
Well, apparently I didn't do that well, but it worked out. It's one of those things where you go very quickly, right, because it is public. It's being televised. There's people in the audience. They're asking questions that you always think, well, I could have answered that better. But I think one applicant went an hour and 20 minutes, and I think I went an hour and a half, or not a half hour. Half hour. So I did receive some input that it was too quick.
But
it worked.
Yeah. Sometimes short answers are the best too.
That's
just get right to the point.
Right. That's where I'm always at.
Yeah. It's too bad politicians don't think that way, but so you went through the rest of the interview process,
selection. And then that night of the public interviews, they went into closed session and deliberated, and then they came out of it with a unanimous vote for me as the superintendent of the public schools.
Cool, very cool.
And then there was a time of contract negotiations and determining when the date starts, but that was officially July 1st was when I started.
So, and you've been with the district for almost 30 years, correct? Somewhere?
This year's my 28th year.
28th year. Mm-hmm. So did you ever think that when you were a student teacher that you would, I don't want to say grow up to be, but you know what I mean?
No, not at all.
Superintendent?
If you would have told the 21-year-old, 22-year-old me that I'd be the superintendent, I would have never guessed it. Never guessed it. Or even the 50-year-old superintendent, I would never have thought that this would be my career, but...
And it's all with OPS. All 28 years.
Student teaching, substitute teaching, actual teaching in the Omaha Public Schools. Mm-hmm. All 28 years in the Omaha Public Schools.
Wow.
Yep.
It seems like over the last maybe 20 or 30 years, enrollment is down. Is that a function of the fact that population is down or smaller families? It seems like years ago, there might have been 60 or 65,000 students in the OPS school system, and now it's down somewhere in the 50
Yeah,
range?
I think the peak of the Omaha Public Schools was somewhere in the 70s, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a political landscape of busing and some other things that people made choice to leave the Omaha Public Schools. And so we've been pretty consistent at about 52,000. We were headed up pre-COVID, but then that number dropped after COVID. But we're about at very close to 53,000.
53,000. And that probably lends itself a little bit to a smaller class size, a little bit more, or is there a specific ratio that you guys try to stick to? Or
well, I think what happened also is we had the Great Resignation too. We had a lot of teachers leave, a lot of staff leave right after COVID, and so it didn't really allow us to do smaller class sizes. In fact, our class sizes are probably even a little bit larger than they were pre-COVID, because in addition to the people leaving, we also opened 5 new schools after COVID, and so it actually spread out more staff.
Spread more.
Yeah, and so we're making that turn a little bit. We're starting to see people come back. We're about close to a little over 8,000 employees in the school district.
And you touch on the fact that the other, I guess there's 2 other school districts, right? Millard and Westside are kind of the two.
There's I think 12.
Are there total?
Yeah.
Is that Elkhorn too, or is that?
That's Elkhorn, Gretna.
So they all have a superintendent. They all have a
superintendent.
Yeah. Is there a time that was it Ernie Chambers that came out? Wasn't he trying to split OPS up at one time to have 3 separate districts just for, not including the Millard and
So there was a time, and I can't think of the exact year, but I think it was more than Ernie Chambers.
Or something.
Yeah, that there was. It was during the One City, One School District.
Okay, I couldn't remember the name.
Then there was kind of a counter argument of breaking out the Omaha Public Schools into 3 separate districts. But then there was a decision to come up with a learning community. But I think it was more than just Mr. Chambers. I think there was a couple other people involved.
And that, from what I understand, was defeted. And
it was.
So it's just now it's OPS.
It is OPS and still those other school districts.
And you have several employees. I don't know, what's the total, 6,000 or 7,000?
A little over
8,000 now?
Yep.
Wow, that's a big staff.
It is a big staff.
You don't have to do all their performance reviews, do you?
No, I do not. No, I do not, thankfully. But yeah, a little over 8,000.
So you mentioned COVID, and unfortunately, OPS and probably several other schools throughout the nation lost teachers. Where did they go? Are they coming back? Are they slowly coming back? Did they just decide, I'm done with teaching? Or
well, I think a little bit of both. Some were either close to retirement or were at retirement age and decided to retire at that point. Some may have left to go to another school district because they may have thought it was different somewhere in another school district. There were some that just left and weren't even eligible to retire. But we are seeing some people come back. We're seeing some people from other school districts that may have retired and come back to the Omaha Public Schools.
Oh, that's
good.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, it was a wide range. I think the issue was that during COVID, teachers were kind of looked upon as almost heroes, that they're managing all this and the masks and the anger from parents and all that was going on. And then as soon as COVID was off, that almost switched. And I think that had an impact on people wanting to be in the business.
Caught them by surprise or whatever. Just said, hey, it's time for me to either retire or go back to work. So running the largest school district in the state, what are some of the biggest challenges that the district faces or you are looking at? We mentioned earlier before we started talking about the strategic plan, and you're kind of getting to that 2025. It was 2020 to 25, the plan. What happens now?
Well, so, if you think of the Omaha Public Schools, it's the scale of everything. We serve about 10 million meals in a school year. If you include summer school, 10 million. And so
they don't serve that same little pizza thing that I got.
It's a square pizza. It's the square pizza and maybe a beef cutlet.
Yeah, probably the same stuff that
we serve good things.
60 years ago,
healthy. But I mean, if you think of that, just gives you the scale of the Omaha Public Schools. At any given time, we have 14,000 kids riding a bus, up to a little over 300, maybe close to 400 buses on the road at one time.
You just changed busing companies too this year,
we changed a
right?
busing company to Zoom.
Are these the electric buses?
No.
They do have a line of electric buses.
They do have a line, but
these
there's
aren't-
there's not a big infrastructure in Omaha to sustain
to
that or support that. I mean, if you think of the routes and how many times they're driving. So no.
I didn't mean to get you off topic.
No,
it's
but
just-
so there's all this stuff, but I don't know that the Omaha Public Schools runs into anything more than any other school district. I think it's just scale.
Yeah.
I think with 52,000 kids and 8,000, 9,000 staff members, there's just a lot going on always.
Yeah.
But staffing initially was, what kept me up at night. It still does a little bit, but we're making that turn.
Yeah.
We're seeing more people apply. We've done some hiring fairs or interview fairs that have had amazing turnout. And so we do see those numbers going up, but that might not be the teacher's experience in a specific school or specific classroom if they have so many kids. Yeah. So we're not saying we're at that point where we're satisfied, but that's a challenge across the country as far as staffing for schools. So that we weren't saved from that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I know we had talked to Heath Mello earlier and the mayor about the fact that Forbes had named Omaha the place to move to. Mm-hmm. And I joked with both of them, you would think we'd have to have the National Guard at the Mormon Bridge to keep people from coming over. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen that yet.
No.
And maybe it just takes a while for that information to get out. And I know that Heath had brought it up. You just can't bring a company to Omaha or to Nebraska without having people to work, and you can't get the people here until you have something for them. But it sounds like definitely there's teaching opportunities here.
There's teaching opportunities. There's bus driver opportunities. There's pretty much any position in the Omaha Public Schools is an opportunity. We are seeing them fill up a little bit more than we have in the past, especially the full-time positions, which is an interesting too. You wonder what else is going on that has brought people back or brought so many applicants.
Yeah.
But you have to have people to do the work.
Yeah. Let's talk about just the school itself. There's so many changes now and so many distractions. I had a conversation with a friend of mine at lunch today. He was talking about one of the private schools in Omaha where they have to check their phone in, they have to check their laptop in, they have to do a bunch of, the only distraction I had when I was in high school and junior high school were, Wendy Danielenko and Jeannie Montgomery. And now...
That's oddly specific.
That explains a lot in my later life.
But
these kids are deluged now with so much technological input, whether it's a phone or a watch, and just stuff that's going on. How does the school handle all that, and how do you keep the kids focused on learning?
Imagine having that access when you were in middle school or high school. Or what people recorded you doing or not doing.
Right.
It's very hard to control because to your point about a watch, you can tell people to put their cell phone away, but they still have access.
Yeah, and they can hide it under their cuff or whatever.
So we've done some things in secondary schools that we've backed up a little bit on allowing cell phone use. You see our high schools having places for kids to put their cell phone when they're entering the classroom. But it is hard to control because cell phones, just like us as adults, are wired into kids' brains and almost created to be addictive.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot harder than just to say, put your cell phone away. There's got to be a substitute. There's got to be something else that fills that gap.
Yeah.
And so there is. It's just not as easy as saying put your cell phone away. Yeah. And imagine as adults if we said you can't have your cell phone out. Yeah. How we'd react. So we're very aware of it. We went from a school district that didn't allow cell phones. Then through change of leadership and other things that happened, we encouraged kids to bring a cell phone because we were trying to incorporate them in instruction. And so we almost went too fast. And then COVID hit. Then we bought iPads for students. So we exposed people to a lot of technology.
Right.
And we're trying to see where we went too quickly and if there's time to kind of go backwards.
Find a happy medium somewhere in between.
And make sure that it's not the sole instructional materials or that kids, it's not a distraction.
And I would think that part of that is probably parental too. I mean, unfortunate circumstances that have happened all over the United States. I can understand where a mom says, you keep your phone on you. I want to know if something's going on. And safety is obviously a huge fact, huge concern in running a big school district or any school district right now, and being able to be in contact with something if they hear something or see something. It's, being able to call somebody right away. How do you...
Right. It's that balance of, how many years did we not have cell phones that parents could still call the front desk or call the office and
principal's office. Is Gil out there? Many times. I probably was.
And who were the two people that were your
Wendy Danielenko and Jeannie Montgomery.
All right, I wanted to get that in again. But yeah, you have to do that balance of safety versus instructional time, and what's going on. Our ability to communicate families has improved as well. We can do mass communications with every family in the school district. We've improved our communication too. When the tornadoes hit that.
Wasn't that amazing? That
it was. We had kids on buses when those hit, and so we had parents wanting to know what happened, and we were able to update them with texts and emails.
So is there a specific app? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is there an app that they download to find this, or is that?
So it's through our our website, or it's called Blackboard, but it was purchased by Final Site is now what it owns them. But there's those mass communication tools that allow us to get right to parents.
And then they probably feel a little bit safer anyway, knowing that they can be in contact. Yeah, I know that I had a couple of friends that had kids in school out in the Elkhorn area, and the parents were told, don't go.
Right.
The kids are safe where they're at, whether they were on the bus or where they were in the school, and they could shelter in place. And that was a crazy time for
and some of our schools are built to be shelters too.
Yeah.
So you have places in schools that are made to be shelters.
Yeah.
So balancing that with also, I understand as a parent too, you want to know right then and there if your child's safe or they're in the shelter.
Yeah.
I understand that completely.
Yeah.
But and then after that, or a week later, it was flooding and mass rain. So we had to cancel some graduations because of all the rain.
Well, you probably had kids where their homes were destroyed too, and then how do you
Right.
Yeah, that was a rough deal. So with artificial intelligence and Chat GPT.
There you go. Yeah.
I already emphasize that because I had a buddy say it's not Chat GBT, which
I've used that too. My family corrected me.
How do you see that figuring into the education process now?
Yeah, and it's like cell phones in a way. It was the same discussion we had with cell phones, 20 years ago. How do you incorporate it, or do you incorporate it, or do you block it somehow? There was conversations about cell phones where you could put blockers on your buildings when cell phones were coming out. But this AI's here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going away.
No.
It has to be incorporated in how kids can use it in order to supplement or make themselves better writers. I mean, there's so many uses of it. It'll be interesting to see how it transforms education, and how there's workplaces that encourage you to use it.
Right.
And so you do your work with it.
Yeah.
So how do we get students connected to it in a meaningful way that kind of supplements what's happening in a classroom? But it's not going away.
No.
We have to figure out how to work it.
How to manage it and keep it under control and make sure the kids aren't just... I was listening to CNBC several months or so. I think it was CNBC. And they were talking about AI. And I can't remember who the newscaster was or who their guest was. But he said something about AI now basically has a IQ of somewhere around 68 to 70, which obviously limits that information that's out there, but it continues to grow. And, at some point it might end up achieving 150, 160 IQ, which is a whole lot different than where it's at now. Right. And I suppose if the kids are, if they're writing an essay or they're doing a book report or something like that, there's got to be something where they referenced. It's not just saying, "Hey, type this in and print it out and turn it in. There's got to be some follow-up, or somebody's got to check their work.
Right. Well, and that's there was a software, and I can't remember what it was called, that you could run a paper through or scan a paper through, years ago and see if it was plagiarized.
Oh.
And so, and
I'm glad that machine wasn't out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I didn't plagiarize anything.
No, don't. But there was some software that you could run something through and to see if AI
would catch.
But AI is progressing so much that that's even harder to do. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it transforms education or society as a whole.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess from maybe a positive standpoint, it's going to give people access to more information faster. It's just a matter of whether it's correct information or how. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see the school district, let's say, in the next 10 years? What's on the horizon? Like we mentioned, you're kind of getting to the end of the original strategic plan, the 2025 plan. What's next?
So that plan was released, a few months before the lockdown,
Right.
And so it was a 5-year plan, but we've probably really been working on it for 3 years,
Okay.
because
You didn't have
everything
the-
changed
Yeah.
during that time frame of disruption with COVID. So the 24-25 school year is the last year of that plan. So there are certain things we'll be reporting out to the Board of Education June of 2025.
Okay.
How we did on those goals.
Right.
We haven't met all of them. And
But you lost 2 years,
yeah,
basically.
Right. I mean, it's not for lack of trying.
Right. Yeah.
But we have to be honest about that and say where we fell short. We're working, so we'll then work on a new strategic plan, and it has to be around literacy.
Right.
It has to be around a common goal for the school district to move forward. What we learned from COVID was that the school district could work on a singular thing, and that
Okay.
was COVID. I mean, we were at a point where we were wiping door handles down
Yeah.
before you left an office.
Yeah.
So if we can do that for that, we can sure do instruction better. We can improve reading
Right.
with that same sort of zeal.
Yeah.
So that's how I envision it. The board will be a part of it, but we've already been talking about this idea of a moonshot of getting everybody in the organization to work towards one goal.
Okay.
And it's around literacy and making sure all kids can read on grade level.
Yeah.
And our goal is 2030 for that. But we also have some things we're going through accreditation. So we'll get some things from that we'll have to follow up on as part of the next strategic plan as well.
Is literacy, you touched on that twice, is literacy still an issue in Omaha itself, or is that a nationwide thing? Is it more?
It is. It's a nationwide thing. It's just literacy in the sense of reading on grade level is a
Right.
thing in the Omaha Public Schools. But it's just not being able to read. It's comprehension.
Right.
There's so much more to it than just reading.
Yeah.
And so how do we leverage our community resources, our teachers, everybody in the organization so kids can read
Yeah.
on grade level? It's a big project, but I think with everybody moving that same direction.
I just wouldn't. I don't have kids, but it would just amaze me that in 2024 that there's people that just still can't read.
Yeah.
With all the opportunity that's out there, that still goes on. But I guess a lot of it probably has to do with a home life, also, or if there's some other learning disability that they have, and obviously the school system works to identify those, correct?
Right.
And
We
it
do.
gets them in the right path so that they can.
You have to
learn.
assess where they are and figure out a plan to
Yeah.
get them back on grade level or figure out what's that block. And so many things have not changed too over the years. There's so many other factors that contribute to that. But the Omaha Public Schools has been around for 170 years.
Right.
And
I think the oldest school is somewhere around 1860 or 1870, somewhere around there, one of the
Right.
elementary schools.
I can't think of what that one would be at the top of my head, but
Yeah,
Central High School's one.
Central High School's been around for a long time.
Yeah, Central offices, the TAC building's been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
So we have some old buildings, but
But there weren't that many people back then either.
that's
you know?
true. That's true. And we did open 5 new schools in the last 3 years too. So
Yeah, was it 2 just in the past 2 years, 23, 24. I think there were two that opened
two
up.
new high schools, a
One
middle
in Bennington
school.
and
Well, yes, close to Bennington.
Close to
but
Bennington,
the Omaha
okay.
Public Schools. You can see Bennington from
Okay.
the high school. But two new high schools, a middle school, and two new elementaries.
Yeah.
Which is great that we could do that.
Yeah, that's it gives people it gives kids an opportunity to at least stay within their neighborhood if they want to stay in their
Right.
neighborhood, and just hopefully you can continue to find good teachers
Right.
to apply. So if you're out there and you're looking for a job
Yes,
and
yes.
you want to be a teacher,
Right.
you don't necessarily have to call Matt.
You
but-
can.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I know the process. And there's also not a lot of teachers in the pipeline. There's not a lot of teachers who want to
True.
be teachers, or people.
There's some
who
great benefits, right? There's
Right.
pensions.
Pensions,
There's
yeah.
the pay is
Insurance,
pretty
yeah.
good. Insurance.
We're doing better on pay, and we're doing some kind of grow your own programs. Every high school has Ed Rising, so we're trying to get students interested in the field.
Okay.
We're doing a lot of great work with UNO and getting kids into a program that is paid by the Omaha Public Schools.
Oh, wow.
So you can go into UNO, into a cohort, and leave getting to work for the Omaha Public Schools.
Oh, wow.
So we have some things in the works, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming on
Oh, you
our
bet.
show,
You bet.
and it's been an honor to have you out
thank
here,
you.
and a
I
privilege to
appreciate-
meet you. And
appreciate the opportunity.
I hope you continue. I hope you're with the school district for many, 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 many years. And
I plan on being.
okay,
Yes. So thank
sounds
you.
good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for joining us today. Check out the link in the show notes for more resources, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode.